So Meisner and Shakespeare aren't often kind of talked about in the same sentence. We describe them as strange bedfellows on the back of the book, in fact. Um, but we had three key intentions with this book. Firstly, to look at the principles of Sanford Meisner's work and the context of his life and times, to think about where those principles came from. Secondly, to look at the particular exercises and activities that he developed to support actors. But then, crucially, thirdly, to look at adapting his work to build bridges between his focus on the emotional connections between actors, which is what he was looking for, and working with Shakespeare's text. For anybody unfamiliar with Meisner, just very quickly, he was an American teacher of acting who began his work with the group theatre in the 1920s in New York, worked with the likes of Stella Adler, Lee Strasberg, influenced by Stanislavski, very strongly influenced by Stanislavski, but then those people kind of took those ideas in their own ways and have been very influential on theatre and film work ever since. I suppose, just to say, his most famous or his most well-known principle in working with actors is what he called living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. So this idea that actors are bringing their own lived experiences to the text, responding moment to moment to the other actors as fellow human beings. And he describes his own work as, this is a quote, he says, "In a nutshell, the process of filling a cold text with your life."
I think one thing that we've all felt with these books is that, yes, they'll be very useful for actors in a rehearsal room. They'll also be very useful for students in a drama school setting, but also in a classroom setting. I wondered if you could each just say something about how you hope or how you planned that your books might be used in the rehearsal room and in the classroom.
I've worked with students for many years in all sorts of different institutions and all sorts of different levels. I ran the MA program at ArtsEd, and I've worked with tiny children in America, and it's a whole range of students I've worked with. And the thing about students, when they meet Shakespeare and they arrive and they pick up a Shakespeare text, they bring such a weight of stuff with them, and that stuff is often because they've been taught it badly in school. And in fact, it's the thing I say to them immediately. If you don't like this stuff and you're an actor, I'm outrageous enough to say you've simply been taught it badly. Because I cannot believe an actor doesn't connect to Shakespeare. It's because there's something has got in the way of that understanding early on. And I think what's exciting about our book is we're really passionate about it being something that is about everyone uniquely can bring their own unique expression into Shakespeare. And Meisner's genius really is about, he created a thing that taught actors how to connect. Such a simple thing. We talk about, if you ask any actor, any student, and you say, do you believe that acting is reacting? And they'll go, yes, yes, yes. And you go, when did you last do it? And there's silence. Because actually that very simple exchange is something that gets forgotten. And that's what Meisner really focuses on. But what I found over the years is that there was no real process to help you get into working with it on text. So you had all these fantastically connected actors. They're connected, they're authentic, and they're alive, but they're not actually able to get into the text, particularly Shakespeare text, because the great thing about Meisner is he helps you make the text your own. There's huge ownership involved in this process. Each actor can grab it and make it their own. As Tracy said, he said to bring the text to your life. We want everybody's unique life on the stage so that we as an audience get to feel. The actor's only job is to make us feel. I believe that passionately. And I think one of the things that the book helps you do is give you a really methodical process, from line learning, the scariest bit, in this very methodical way, so that you can do a performance at the end. So we very much take you on a kind of journey with the various exercises and very kind of immediate ways of practicing stuff that we're teaching you in the writing. You read stuff and then you do an exercise. You apply it. There's a metaphor. It's all very relatable too. So I hope that people can really grab it, use it, and make Shakespeare their own. These actors all bring their own unique responses.
Which of Meisner's techniques or exercises have you found most useful or most revealing when you've been rehearsing Shakespeare or working on bits of Shakespeare text?
Yes, Michael. Well, Meisner's famous technique is one that he's renowned for, is his exercise called repetition. It's a very basic exercise, which bizarrely, the words have no meaning. The words are meant to float over the top of the exercise of two actors bandying back and forth a repeated phrase. The reason behind that is to train the muscles of the actor to see clearly the other actor and respond honestly from their point of view. And that's the bedrock of Meisner. And I build everything that I build from there onto that. And when I say I build, is because over the last 15 years, I've developed an acting method that applies the principles that we'd all recognize and know, like objectives and all the things that we have all learned in every drama school. But I put them into a method that connects to repetition, that builds on that very simple exchange of connection between human beings. Because what you get then is the words don't have meaning. But everyone gets that confused and thinks that's what Meisner's about. But that's the beginning. It's like a gym exercise. It's training the muscles so your actor is able then to respond to text in a way that is completely connected to the other actor. It's not connected to what they think it should be, what they're intellectually working out to be. The interesting thing for us in doing this book is realizing, when I looked at my career, it was Cicely Berry who was a huge influence on me, because she really, because I'd worked a lot at the RSC and I'd worked with extraordinary actors. I'd worked assisting, and I was the associate on The Tempest, indeed, working and seeing Simon so close up, and then seeing Judi Dench so close up, and Vanessa Redgrave like this. And I thought, what have these people got? Because they are alive actors. They are moment-to-moment actors. And Meisner's thing trained you in repetition to be a moment-to-moment person, let alone a moment-to-moment actor. You're totally alive in the moment. Now, what is missing from Meisner is his interest in the text, because he talked about it floating like a canoe over this river of emotion. Now, when I was a passionate devotee of Shakespeare for so many years, 20 years now, and I thought, wait a minute, that's ridiculous. You can't say that of Shakespeare. But I had to create a process, and I've created one now, and it's called the Gonsalves method, that applies text, particularly Shakespeare, in a way to allow, and to really link to Cis Berry's work on finding the need to speak. I kept telling Tracy, we've got to quote from that book. And it took about 6 months for her to say, there is no book called The Need to Speak. But I said, but because, Cis's whole passion was actors absolutely having a need to speak to the other actor through the text. And I think it's wonderful hearing from Penny and Bennett, because those technical aspects of being really clear about the thee and thou, and really clear about the rhetoric, gives you these tools, gives the actor these tools that I would argue then need to be used to get your objective. Literally just that. So I think repetition linked to objectives is he said you've got to see clearly and respond honestly. And I realized one day, why do we have to see so clearly? What are we seeing so clearly? And that was the breakthrough. And that's what the Gonsalves method built up, is you're seeing, are you getting your objective?
Right.
And then responding with the language, with the text, with all the things that we talk about in the book.
Cool. And Tracy, I assume you agree with what Aileen has been saying so far. Do you want to add anything? I mean, do you feel, is there something in particular about your experience of Meisner that bless you, that contributes something that you couldn't get when working on Shakespeare just from understanding you and thou and knowing all about rhetoric?
Yeah, that's a really good kind of lead in, actually, because I think Aileen and I, through the process of this book, have had brilliant discussions that we've thoroughly enjoyed. And we have really wrestled, I think, with this aspect of Shakespeare. Working with Shakespeare, you have to kind of focus on the text. None of us are we're all focused on the text. We're all focused on what that specificity of you and thou brings, the specificity of the rhetoric, that Cicely Berry always talked about, that specificity of thought that comes from the text. So we're all deeply wedded to that. And as a kind of Shakespeare academic, I suppose, what I loved about working with Aileen was having these really knotty conversations where Meisner's work is coming from the opposite direction. Sis and John Barton were always about, you have to work out the thought and then the feeling will come. And Meisner had this big sign apparently in his classroom that said, "Act before you think." So his process was all about that deep connection emotionally, finding that connection between people. And then, as Aileen said, that's your river, and then you put the canoe on top of it. And we talked a lot about that metaphor of the canoe, and the fact that actually with Shakespeare, you haven't just got an ordinary canoe, you've got this Olympic standard canoe, and you've got to learn how to steer it. So all that stuff about pronouns, all that stuff about rhetoric, all the deep kind of textual knowledge is really important in understanding how your canoe has been built, so that you learn how to steer it, but also that river of emotion, that's what you're steering it on. So both come together. So, we've had lots of really kind of interesting discussions about that. And that was the sort of the thing that we wrestled with, was that bridge between Meisner's work and the textual work, which I hope is what we've achieved in this book.
Yeah. Do you think you have to learn the lines before you even know which river you're on? Or is that all part of the canoe?
Well, I mean, the repetition is about finding the river, and then, but Aileen will tell you how important it is to learn your lines first. So I'll have her on that. She's quite passionate about it.
I'm actually writing another book on line learning because you'll be amazed to realise that there are no books on how to learn your lines. And it's a massively offensive to me, because the only thing that actors need to do is learn their lines. But actually, it's really hard. I'm devoted to this idea of, and this will shock people, I'm sure, but uninflected line learning. And again, I'll talk about Simon again, but when we ran lines, and when I was working on The Tempest, I remember Simon the second day coming to me and saying, "Can I meet you in the mornings before rehearsal, and would you run lines with me?" And I was like, "Oh, please don't let him run them in a stupid way, please." And I said, "Of course, Simon, I'd love to. And he was just brilliant. And I quote you ever since. I quote you today. So I've got rehearsals on at the moment for a Romeo and Juliet I'm doing in Coventry and in London. And the actors are in agony, because the process that I've developed is absolutely obsessively strict, uninflected line learning. You would die. I mean, I can't have voice people anywhere near us, because they.
No, I'm on your side on that.
I know your side.
I think you can do it as an uninflected line learning. You can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, we have a whole process. So I'll give you a quick example. So I say, come you spirits. We have robot in our first stage. Come you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here and Phil, just to shock you all. And then we go, because that is a pattern in itself, we do up and down, random. So come you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here and Phil me from there. I know you're all turning in your graves or in your little living rooms there, but there's a whole process. And then we do throwing something at the same time. The reason behind all this is, if you get actors to absolutely know those lines without any pattern, in a way that it's falling out of their mouths, then all of their attention can 100% be on the other actor. And the lines just come because they've got a job to do. They're trying to get them to do something. And now you'll be amazed. The only thing I shout in rehearsals, and I do shout it, is it working? Because the actor can see if it's working, because they're looking at the other actor with their full attention. And now they have the lines, because Shakespeare has given them the lines. They don't even have to think about it. Yeah. We always say that we must trust the text with Shakespeare, but you've also got to trust the actor if they're in connection with the other actor and trying to get them to do something. So I'd say line learning is beyond. I can't express how important line learning is. I'm not just saying it because all my actors are watching.
I think we should also say in that, though, that it's not about just learning Meisner was all about is learning the lines, and the kind of the text will follow. But Aileen's process and how she works is using that Meisner, but it is absolutely about knowing what the text is doing. So it is about going into those details of what the text is doing as well, but understanding that you do all that really hard work about absolutely understanding what is going on, and then you put it in the back of your brain, and it will come in the moment. So it's not just about speaking the words and trusting that the words will do it for themselves. It is all that hard work goes on first.
Well, it's a fast technique.
Michael, can I just say just a very brief example, Michael? The way I came up with this line learning thing was my grandmother in Goa. It was in Goa, and in Goa, when the bell rings at 7 o'clock, it's the Angelus prayer. And she had Alzheimer's, and she didn't speak, she didn't do anything all night and day. But at 7 o'clock every day, when she heard that bell in her ear, she stood up. She didn't even stand up, but she stood up and recited this huge prayer. And we remember watching it, just going, this is unbelievable, every day. And it's because from when she was 7 years old till she was 97, that's what they do in Goa. When you hear the bell, you say these prayers. So all the family were like, it's a miracle, it's a miracle. And I'm like, this is interesting. And because I thought, this is lines. That's a cue. The bell is the cue. And these lines come out unbidden out of her head. She's not thinking at all. And the phrase we use is to learn the lines beyond learning. Because we all can sing happy birthday. We all can say a prayer. Where are those lines in our head? Now, actors, I can tell you now, are immediately better actors and better Shakespeare actors, better any actor, if they learn the lines beyond learning. And it's the thing I'd recommend to anyone listening. You know. And thanks for that thumbs up, Simon, because I can now say, Simon Russell-Beale did a thumbs up to Uninflected Line.
Yeah.
I was very honoured, I don't say that lightly, to be asked to co-edit with you to the performance editions. And I love the idea of, I've been wedded to Arden editions all my professional life. So I love the idea of taking all that massive amount of scholarship and producing editions that are actually lighter, apart from anything else, but also simple to use on the rehearsal room floor. And I thought that was a fantastic idea. I'm hoping that this is the beginning of a long series of companions, because I think they're just useful. And I think it's not only for actors, it's not only for practitioners. I think they're the sort of books that once you enter the deep, is the word wormhole or black rabbit hole of Shakespearean scholarship, then these are the sort of books that you become interested in, because inevitably, if you read an introduction to one of the big boy Ardens, you'll be coming up against references to you and thou and rhetoric and whatever. And it's just useful to have something at your side as a general reader that will explain that to you. So I think I'm thrilled that this might be the start of a very useful series of books.